So it's so great to have you here, Chuck, on the Cartoon Everything podcast. Chris and I both know you personally and enjoy you tremendously for who you are, not just the amazing cartoons that you make.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm blushing. Thank you.
Yeah, blushing is my natural complexion. So.
Yes, we've been chatting with people who, for the most part, we're trying to do a lot of cartoonists, but some illustrators who maybe have a real passion for cartooning, but also who may have like started in cartoons. We're talking about like how cartoons entered your life, how cartoons kind of like shaped you,
Yeah.
to what and who and how you do what you do. So so we know that you're a Philly guy.
Yes. Born and raised in Philadelphia. Yeah. In Northeast Philadelphia, it's not quite as dangerous as it was in Center City during the 70s. So a little bit better, row homes, but a little bit of chaos. I grew up in a pretty crowded row home of I have two older brothers and an older sister. And then my dad left when I was 4, but it was still we had a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom.
Oh,
it was a little crazy.
Yeah.
But it was the youngest. Yeah. Yeah. What's that?
I said that explains a
It
lot.
does. It does.
Yeah.
Look at me. Yeah, my brothers liked to draw, but none of them pursued it like I did. And we, after my dad left, we didn't have much money. So my mom, whatever job she could get, I remember she would just bring home reams of copy paper. Like she'd bring like 1 ream of copy paper. And with that and crayons, like we would just go crazy. It was really fun. And then we always managed to have 2 newspapers. The Philadelphia Daily News is just kind of like a tabloid type paper. And then the Philadelphia Inquirer, which you guys might have heard of. And I always loved reading the comic strips, from those. I don't even remember when I started reading those, but I always read the comic strips, whether it was Sundays or dailies. So the Peanuts were huge. The Peanuts cartoons, I remember watching those with my family. We didn't have a color TV, I think, until I was in 8th grade, so like 1987. So we had this little black and white TV. And I remember us all watching, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and, all the holiday. I just remember Charlie Brown just had a huge impact on me, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know what it was, but the first drawing I remember drawing was of Peppermint Patty. And the reason I remember that was at my friend's house, and my friend's mother said, "That's a great drawing. She looks great." And I went, "She? It's a boy." She was like, "No, Peppermint Patty's a girl." And I ripped it up. Peppermint Patty's still like my favorite character, then, Saturday morning cartoons. Gosh, I remember it's like, waiting for the new ones to come out was so exciting. It was I hated school, but I loved when school started because I knew that Saturday morning cartoons are starting.
Right, September.
New ones,
Yeah. The beginning of September would be the new season of Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah. And we were always the type of family, like, I hate to say that I hate Disney, but I just never liked Disney cartoons because it was too fluffy to me. You know what I mean? It was just like, and so, living in a family we were kind of violent with one another, being as close as we were in age. I guess I related more to Looney Tunes cartoons because they were like whacking each other on the head, hitting each other with mallets, and it just made us laugh. Disney movies just did not make us laugh. We just were like, what the hell why is everyone always singing? We were always so annoyed by it. But I can't remember the first time. Sorry. The first time I saw an animated movie in the theaters, I really don't have a memory. But I was just saying to my wife, Daisy, I remember my brothers and I went to a triple feature, which was like, that's a lot of time in a theater.
A lot of movies, yeah.
But if they're 90-minute movies, it's really not that long, I guess. But I think one of them was Sleeping Beauty, which I think still to this day is Disney's best movie ever made. It was just gorgeous. I still have memories of seeing that dragon, that graphic black dragon, and, just how it moved me. And then I think after that was Tron, which we wasn't, because it was so groundbreaking. And then the Dark Crystal, like, we were always into the Muppets, and I know it's, a lot of people don't think of the Muppets as cartoons, but Jim Henson was a cartoonist. You look at his drawings,
Right.
the style of the characters, they're just like cartoon characters come to life, So when we saw the Dark Crystal, because we had seen the Muppet Show, I kind of grew up with that. I love that. I love Sesame Street. But seeing the Dark Crystal was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. Like I still get goosebumps watching that movie. Like it's just incredible to me. So what they were capable of doing. I always loved drawing. I kept drawing. Everyone always told me I was going to be an artist. So I felt like I had no choice in the matter. I remember my dad did say to me once, and he wasn't, I don't want to give a bad impression. He wasn't like a discouraging, grouchy guy, but he said, you'll make more money if you're a car mechanic. So, and this was probably when I was 5, and he probably was just ribbing me, but I remember that whenever people would say, you're going to be an artist someday. And I'm like, no, I'd rather be a car mechanic. It became like a joke. But yeah, I just, you guys, I'm sure you can relate to it. You feel like you have no choice but to draw.
Yeah.
You really like I just had carpal tunnel surgery in December. And before that, I had to take like 6 months off drawing. And I'm just now, it takes about 3 months for recovery, but I'm just now kind of getting back up on the horse.
Good.
And but it was so painful to just be like, I want to draw, and I just couldn't. I just, couldn't. And then it became so long. I waited so long that drawing became like a chore.
Yep.
So now I'm having to like really push myself and, kind of relearn some things in order to get that ball rolling.
I had gone through that too. I had carpal too, and I had the same thing. I had months where I couldn't draw, and it just made me really think about just how complicated the anatomy is of the hand, and how many parts are in the hand, and how we people who use our hand constantly.
Yeah, and how it affects your forearm too. Like I get a lot of like tennis elbow, and it's something you never think of in a million years would happen to you.
Yeah. But even like just to think about just like this part and all of the all of the parts and the whole idea that you're literally getting your nerves are getting strangled.
Yes. Yeah.
Right here, and that's what causes like carpal tunnel. And I had it for a while, I guess, and was ignoring it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until it was the point where I couldn't draw that I said, I better go to a hand doctor.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what I was running into too, because I could work through the pain. Right. It was when my arm would go to sleep and I had to wait like 5 minutes. And then it became like, it started off like once every couple hours it would happen. And then it became every 15 minutes. And I was like, all right, I can't function doing this. So yeah, I'm so glad I did, because I did go to physical therapy, and they were just like, no, you need surgery, because the physical therapy was actually making it worse, which was pretty interesting. Thanks. But so to the young viewers, I always say, like, take care of your hand, do your stretches, watch your sitting positions, that's really important. Anyway. Drink your prune juice, as I made that joke on Pencil to Pencil.
Very important.
It is. Yeah, you just got to take care of yourself, because we're just, we're hunched over all the time. So just make sure to stretch and things. And there's a couple books out there, I think, that cartoonists have made, especially for younger people to take care of themselves, But
yeah. Have you ever had problems, Chris? Because, you're somebody who goes away with the caricatures and you're drawing.
Yeah, and I've had friends that get that, like you said, Chuck, like tennis elbow from doing live caricature. But knock on wood, so far so good.
Yeah.
But I don't do it as often as I used to. So I think I'm trying to pull back.
It's funny. I forgot about that's how I really knew I had a problem, because I hadn't done characters in a while. I did them for like 20 years. And after moving up to Massachusetts, I just kind of, I lost the connection with a lot of the places that would hire me. And then a friend of mine in Philadelphia asked me to do characters at her wedding, and I went, and just having my arm up like that, like it was the most painful 3 hours. Yeah. And I was like, I can never do that. So I could probably do them flat, but having the arm up, I don't know how you guys do it, but anyway.
I do notice, mostly lots of pills. That's how we do it. But, it's.
Right. Yeah.
No, I notice, like, if I haven't done it for a while, then I do a big show or busy, like I'm going to do C2E2 Comic-Con next week. So the first Friday night, I'll probably be really sore, but by Saturday, I'll be fine, or Sunday,
Oh,
I'll be
okay.
fine.
Yeah, like build it up. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to do these after prom parties that were like
Oh, yeah.
midnight to 5 a.m. I used to
Right,
do
right.
those, especially like this time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
My God, it was so disoriented. But yeah, by the end of the day, you were like, they had to
Yep.
drive home. The sun's
Right.
coming up. It's really weird. But anyway, so I'm just trying to think of how I.
Well,
When
what
Yeah,
did you
I
get into
drew.
doing caricature? How did you first start
Oh,
doing
how did
that?
I get it? I was, I think, still in art school. I went to a tiny art school in Philadelphia called the Hushet School of Art. And a friend, was a friend now, but my friend Ramsey and I won a contest where three art schools submitted art to the mayor of Philadelphia for the Philadelphia like city Christmas card. And the mayor liked our card so much. And it was just in a comp form, but he loved it so much he decided to have it printed. And the printers printed it for free. It was like a promo that they did for the city of Philadelphia. But I wound up becoming friends with one of the men that was in charge of that project that was working at the printers. And he he loved comic art. He was like a comic art collector and stuff. And then he hired me I think there was a convention. Can't remember what the convention was for, but he had me do like digital with Illustrator, do like little digital caricatures because he just felt he was like, you can do this. And then he just kept hiring me. And then while I was there at one of the events, a local entertainment industry, provider said, "Oh, we really like your work. Do you work digitally?" I said, "No, but I can do it by hand." And they said, "Actually, that's better. That way we don't have to worry about equipment failing or anything." So I just started
Right.
doing it. It was a really good gig for like 20 years I did that. And actually, I'll tell this story. I think you guys know this story, but because I was working at the Philadelphia Zoo doing illustration, and the Philadelphia,
I was gonna ask you this. Yeah, I think
yeah,
amazing story, and I'll just say this is just so that when I edit it, like I want to just say like this amazing story that you tell about being at the zoo and
yeah,
meeting Jeannie Schultz, right?
yeah, it's so random.
Kind of
Yeah.
having it be like this like moment in your life where it's like one of those moments where you just kind of pivot,
Yes. Yeah. Let me back up though a little bit. When I was in college, I started a comic strip in the Philadelphia or at the school. I just kind of did a comic strip just for fun. A friend of mine was helping me kind of do some gags, and we were doing this comic strip. So I really felt like that's what I wanted to do after I got out of college. And then I found out how hard syndication was. So I was submitting for like 5 years. I was submitting to everybody. And I realized like, oh, I got to get out of my mother's basement. So I just kind of gave up on that. And so I was doing caricatures, which it's difficult for me. I didn't enjoy it as much, but it paid really well. So that's basically why I did it. But so I'm not downplaying anybody that does caricatures because I think what you guys do is amazing. But through a friend of mine at church, she asked me to start doing face painting at these things called Zoo on Wheels, which is big. I would go and paint the faces, and then she started training me on like how to handle some of the small mammals. Like it was a really cool time, but I was just kind of going with the flow. And then I started doing illustrations for the Philadelphia Zoo. It was like a job where I think an intern didn't show up, and I found out about it. And so I just said, "Oh, I'd be willing to do that job." And I had to draw like 148 bugs. It was like a really fun job. Not cartoony, like just kind of black and white sketches. But through that, yeah, they found out I could do caricatures. So they're like, "Oh, we want to try to do caricatures on Saturdays at the Philadelphia Zoo. Would you be willing to try some Saturdays out, see how it goes? We'll do it 50-50." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I show up. It's like a hot August day. It's in 2000. So this is after the Republican convention was in Philadelphia. So Philadelphia had really kind of cleaned the whole city up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there. I don't know if you've ever been in Philadelphia in August, but it's probably just as bad as Florida. Like it's really humid and gross. And I'm just miserable. And I was reading a comic on comics, Scott McCloud's, Understanding Comics. I think it had just come out certainly before that. This woman walks up and she says, "Hey, "Hey, what are you reading?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a comic on comics." And she goes, "Oh, I know a lot of cartoonists." And I was like, "Oh yeah, but like you grew up in Philadelphia, you kind of are
Yeah.
skeptical of everybody." Like, sure.
Sure,
So
lady.
yeah. So she starts saying all these names, and I was like, "Oh, who are you?" And she points. I had this little Snoopy clock. She goes, My husband created him." And even at that point, I'm like, "This lady's crazy." Like, because I
Right.
know where Jeannie Schultz lives. I know who she
Yeah.
is. I don't know her face exactly at this point, but because this is before the internet where you can just look that up. But so she goes into the little store that I was out front of with her grandkids, and then she comes back out and she says, "Look, I'm Jeannie Schultz, and I can see you're not happy with what you're doing here." And I was like, "No, I'm not."
Yeah.
And she says, she puts her hand on my shoulder and she says, basically, like, "At least you're drawing. You're drawing for a living. So you gotta like be happy about that. You're
Mhm.
drawing. You're doing cartoons." And I was like, "Yeah, that's true." And then she like puts her hand on my shoulder and says, "Take care of your gift." And I was like holding back tears.
Yeah.
And this was like right after he passed away too, because he passed away in February of 2000. And so it just like changed me because I was just like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Kind of made me question some things. It just kind of gave me a kick in the butt, but it was just a really special moment. But with so many things that I wanted to tell her, but I was just kind of at a loss for words. Like, I jokingly answered my phone for like a week. Like, "I met Jeannie Schultz,
Yeah.
she's the
Yeah.
first lady of comics,
That's
but,
just crazy. Yeah.
yeah, it was wild. But since she had come because of the Republican convention, a lot of Philadelphia got a lot of press. So she just flew her kids out to see Philadelphia. She had never really been there, except for some little things. But yeah, it was just this amazing little moment that I had that just was like, everything aligned perfectly, for, I guess, God to bring that into my life. It was just incredible.
That's incredible.
But so ever since then, I continued working for the zoo. I loved working at the zoo because I did the Zoo on Wheels program, as I told you guys. So I started working in the volunteer office there, coordinating volunteers. But like on my lunch breaks, I would just go and like, "I'm gonna have lunch with the otters today," and I would just sit and draw the otters. Like not in the pen, but
Yeah.
just watching them. It was really cool. And especially in the winter, like there was never anybody at the zoo, especially if it snowed. So like it was incredible. Like the animals were actually really happy to see you. The gorillas would get all excited. So I would just sit and draw all these animals. It's just, I just love that. But yeah, it's awesome.
Well, did that like was there anything specific that you did after meeting Jeannie Schultz that like you're like, man, I need to get my shit together and like
No, not
start?
really. Yeah. I mean, it just made me appreciate what I was doing.
Right.
And reminded me like, hey, I was born to do this. There's really not much else I can do. I'm not academically smart. That's why I went to the Hutchinson School of Art, because there was no academics. I almost failed out of high school. I think I graduated at like the bottom of my class. And when I went to art school, I graduated with like a 4.4 average, like top of the class. It just showed me like, this is really what I'm supposed to be doing,
Right.
And so it just pushed me to do more work. And then, it just, I took any job I possibly could, no matter what it was. I didn't feel too proud about anything. And that, especially today's day and age, I mean, it was true back then. That's what you have to do. I feel like as a cartoonist, you just kind of have to like, let me try that, or let me try this. Some things you may realize are, they're over your head, but sometimes if something is a little over your head, maybe that's the push you need, to just give that a try and say, I'm going to, I'll consult someone to help me do this,
So when you were going through your like high school into the art school, did you ever have any moment where you turned away from the cartoon kind of visual voice? Did you ever have a struggle between? No. See, that's the stuff like I'm fascinated about.
Yeah.
But you had to do some traditional foundation classes, I'm sure, at the art school.
Yeah, Hutchinson too it was all fine arts based. Like every year, whether you were a designer, an illustrator, or whatever, you had life drawing, you had figure construction, you had So we had some great teachers, and a lot of the teachers that work there, probably 90% of them were all in the industry. They weren't just teachers.
Oh,
They
cool.
were actually working in the industry. So they really could tell you how things are, Yeah, I wound up teaching there after I graduated 5 years. I wound up teaching there for like 13 years. It was just such a great little school. And then it got taken over and just changed so much. But that's what kind of ruined the school, is that they got rid of all the people that were working professionals, and they got all these people came in with master's degrees, and even the students, because I was still teaching there. Even the students were like, these people don't know what they're talking about. Like, it's just like projects and it's not work. You know what I mean? It was a big difference. And then, the school just closed, I think, last year. But
wow,
a great little school. Yeah. Right on the Independence Hall. We were like right next to the Liberty Bell and all that. So it was a really cool location. A great place to go sit and like draw tourists. And, because I used to teach figure construction, Photoshop, and character design. So like figure construction and character design. I was like, this is a nice day. Like, let's go out on the Independence Mall and just find someone funny and we'll just sit and draw. It's really, really fun.
I love your drawings where you showcase that. I've seen some of your sketchbook stuff, and your website has some more of that. But it's like, you hone in on these great characters, and you've got a little note about maybe what they're going through.
Yes.
Funny comment, but
my judgmental commentary. Yeah, I'm I don't know if this is going to be recorded visually or it's just all audio. Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is all.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. But yeah, this is my first sketchbook.
Oh yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you. But yeah, this one's taken me a lot to get through because of the carpal tunnel surgery. But I just
pumpkins on the sticker.
Yeah, what's funny is, look at the number on that pumpkin.
It looks like it says boobs and pumpkin.
Yes. I was like, why would they do that? They did that on purpose. They totally did that on purpose.
Pumpkins. Yes, right.
Well, they always throw like a sticker or something on there, but I just thought it was really funny. But yeah, these are some of my, there's just people I see. A lot of times I see people at the, the grocery store.
Yeah, that's great. Those are great.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just like random sketches. Some I don't do pencil at all. I just kind of go in and just kind of have fun.
Nice. Are these kind of so-called memory sketches where you see somebody walking by and you get a...
Yeah, so most of the time, when I was younger, I didn't have a family, I could sit and just kind of look at people, really study. But now, it's kind of a photograph I take with my mind, and I use the Notes app on my phone. I'll write like, here's the location. This is what this person was wearing. Because I don't feel right taking pictures of people sometimes. I just feel like it's kind of an invasion of their privacy. But that way, it kind of gives me an impression, like how did they make me feel? Because I feel like sometimes looking at the person kind of disrupts the funniness of it. Because I'm focusing so much on what did this guy look like, and what are the buttons. It's like it's not really that important at this point. So it's like, what's the impression that I got, and then I just want to push it a little bit because it's, it's cartoons, I'm not trying to make them look exactly as they are.
Right. I think you just described exactly what cartooning is. It's the feeling of something and the impression, and you push it. Right. So that, like, this little snippet thing that you said that's exactly the definition of what is cartooning versus other kinds of studying life and drawing what you see, being representational. And it's the kind of thing that I'm trying to teach some of my students too. Like the idea that you don't always have to draw exactly what you see, and it's something that maybe I've taken for granted that it just developed naturally. And so, it's interesting when you have a mix of a group of students who you might have like 20 students in your class, and maybe you see like 5 of them who also kind of get that.
Yes.
And then you have 15 of them that are just like, okay, and you're like, here, draw a plant. You guys draw a plant. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. Like my son, we noticed he was observing things that my wife wasn't seeing. And no disrespect to my wife, her mind just works different. She's in pharmaceutical science, and she's very left brain, and we're very right brain. So we would observe things And I love it now because he's 15 and we're going on a cruise in a couple weeks. And I can't wait because he's going to be like, Dad, did you see that guy? Did you see that lady? You know? Yeah, so sometimes he'll draw a version and then I'll draw a version.
Oh, cool.
It's funny, you know, to see what it comes out as. But yeah, going back to what you're saying, that he was struggling with a painting he was doing in school of me, actually. He wanted to paint me. And he was using all this research, having me send him photos, and he was struggling. And I said, Aunt, put the research away. You know what I look like.
Right.
Just try drawing it because, you know, you have all the research. You did all the sketches. Just kind of start over and use your memory. And then if you need the research, go to the research, you know. Right. But just, and then he was like, that worked, you know. And I've done that too as a cartoonist, you know, with these animals that I had to draw for the zoo. A lot of things, backgrounds especially. You know, if I get the research, but I kind of have to get away from it and then just kind of let me figure out, you know, let my heart or my mind kind of figure out what I want the character to come out, you know, in either this animal or the background or this person. So yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, and it's something, again, like I think I take for granted that it's something intuitive and other people don't have that intuition that it's
it's kind of observe and report, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, people often get mad at me at some of the things that I notice, and they think I'm being like super judgmental. And I'm like, I'm just observing. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad or good.
That's the life of a caricature artist.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. You guys always walk that like really fine line. It's funny when I did caricatures, I used to say, because I used to work a lot with other caricatures from the Philadelphia area, and there was one guy that exaggerated like so crazily with that. You know, they were almost abstract. And so I would say I'm the caricaturist that compliments. That's a joke, you know, but I would, you know, try. I didn't like exaggerate unless it was a guy. Guys you can have a little more fun with, but I found that women were a lot more sensitive to it. You know, you get just kind of a feeling from someone when they sit, you know, and there were guys too that were like, you know, hate to say a prima donna, but they were like, you know, posing. Sure. And you're like, what are you doing?
Right. Do you realize where you are right now?
Right. I remember one guy said to me, why do you keep looking at me? And I was like,
yeah.
No reason.
Why do you keep looking at me?
So I'm drawing you.
It's
But yeah, going back to college, like I used to take the L or the subway all the time, and you know, learning to draw on that train with the train movement that really steadied my hand, and I would just sit and draw people, and I learned all these tricks. Like if I noticed they saw me drawing them, I would just look at someone else for a little while and just kind of look at them at the corner of my eye. But yeah, it was fun. I missed that because, you know, as I said, I live in this small Massachusetts town now, and I really miss like the craziness of the city, you know. But I say that, but I'd probably be there for 10 minutes and be like, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah, the reality of it is.
Yeah, it's just, you know, I just needed quiet. You know, even when I lived in the city, we had this little park called Pennypack Park. That was a short bike ride away, maybe a 15-minute bike ride. And I remember I would just go there with my sketchbook and just sit and just, you know, try and it still wasn't quiet, but at least it was quieter than my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. We lived like right near 95. You know, you could kind of tell what time of the day it was from the sound of 95. It was awful.
So growing up, did you have many other artist buddies that you would hang out and draw with?
Yeah, I had a group of friends that really I had a friend that loved comic books. So he's the one that kind of introduced me to comic books. When I was in 7th grade, well, yeah, there's two different ways, because I knew he liked comic books, but I just never got into them. He would show me different things. But I really wasn't aware there were comic book stores at that point. I think the only time I ever saw a comic book was I went to a party, and like a birthday party, and the mom bought comic books for everybody. So I got like a G.I. Joe, Transformers, and I think like a Superman comic. And that was the first time I really saw one, but I didn't even read it. I just kind of looked through it. Mm-hmm. And it kind of irritated me, I'll be honest, because like the colors were off, you know, the registration was off. Yeah. And I was like, I hate this. But in 7th grade, my brother Dan, who used to go to the city a lot, he was a musician. He brought home Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #7, So this is way before the
early
cartoon hit, you know, and that kind of changed everything. Seeing that comic, because I didn't realize comic could be gritty, that could be dark, you know, it could be just black and white, and I was just enthralled by it. And so I just, you know, I started going to the comic book store with my friend, and he would buy, like, I'm not kidding, maybe $30 worth of comics a week, and I would buy like maybe $5 a month, you know, because I just liked independent kind of black and white stuff. And I still, I don't know if you guys can see, but there's Ninja Turtle stuff going.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And then we used to get together and just draw. You know, I had a couple friends, my friend Tom, my friend Joe. We would sit and draw. Even my friend Mike. And then they just stopped doing that. You know, I just kept doing it. You know, and they always encouraged me, which was fun. They always liked what I was doing. I would use them in different strips and things. But yeah, it was really fun. And then I started writing letters to, especially the guy named Jim Lawson, who's one of the Ninja Turtle comic book artists. Yeah, he's not like the creator of them, but he's, you know, prolific Ninja Turtle comic books. I think he did the comic book for 30 years. And he would write back to me once in a while. And then the other guys from Mirage Studios who were taking care of the Ninja Turtle comic. And they really encouraged me, you know, to go different, like try different things. And, you know, it was just amazing to get a letter from someone that you just, you know, thought you'd never even meet. And now they live, like, actually, I think, Kelly, they live like right near you. Most of them.
Not funny, yeah.
But this is the area where the turtles were born. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always say, I've told Chris that the town of Northampton, there's a faction that is trying really hard to have all the manhole covers be plaques.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And there's the people that don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Dover, New Hampshire is where Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird lived, where they created the Turtles. And the house, unfortunately, the house got torn down.
Yeah.
But there's a monument, and the monument is a manhole cover. It's kind of on the sidewalk. Yeah, it's really, I went up for the dedication. It was really fun because it's only about an hour from here.
If they already made them, they can just copy that manhole cover.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't know why you would be embarrassed by that.
They had started a little comic book museum that was
the words and pictures. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so there's still turtle gargoyles.
Oh, is there really? Oh, cool.
They're still there. I hope they don't take them down.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think they're still, I would have to ask Jim, but I think they're still using that studio space. Not in that building, but there's a building around the corner, I think. But that Peter was kind of letting them, you know, work and rent free for a while.
There's an amazing giant Victorian, if you're in Northampton and you kind of leave, you go towards Smith College and you go up this hill. And it's just there's amazing homes up there. And there was one that one of them used to own, and it had this gate, this big wrought iron gate.
Oh, cool.
It wasn't a turtle in the gate. It was like a Medusa head. But it was obviously somebody really interesting lives there because they had this gate made. But it was like
that was probably Peter. Yeah, because I think Peter stayed in the area, but Kevin moved out to LA, I think, to pursue other things. But I really wanted to be a comic book artist, and then you know, I got back into comic strips at college. But yeah, cartooning's always been a part of my life. I can't get away from it. Even in, you know, film and, you know, like Star Wars, you guys see I'm surrounded by Star Wars stuff too. I love Star Wars, just the whole, you know, everything that, you know, I say to my wife, I don't have great memories growing up as a kid. But Star Wars always made me feel happy. I was like, I kind of want to fill my studio with Star Wars stuff because it's just such a fun thing, you know? I don't know what else to say.
So
that's awesome.
Here's a Wampa holding a pencil.
Nice.
A Wampa with a pencil. Yeah, that's hilarious. It's interesting. I mean, I think, you know, again, Star Wars now is something else, right? It's grown into complete.
Right.
I still enjoy it, but.
Well, I was just rewatching. I started rewatching Andor because the new season's coming up.
Such a good show.
So good.
I hated it I think everybody hated it when it started because we were like, "What the hell is this?" And then, like after the third episode, it was like, "Holy crap, this is amazing!"
Oh,
it's adult Star Wars, you know?
Right.
I took a break from Star Wars and then watched Andor and I watched Skeleton Crew. And I felt oh, now I remember why I loved Star Wars.
Yeah, the magic.
Those two kind of reminded me. But again, we were all kids when it came out, so to have something like that begin, and have a whole generation.
Yeah. And I was that perfect age, I think.
By that, it's. I guess imagine that it must also be that way for kids who had Harry Potter come out when they were young.
Yeah.
Also, kind of that thing is like something happened and it started, and we were the ones who got it. First.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, I think it's important as a cartoonist to, you really have to hold on to your childhood wonder and awe. You see a lot of people that lose that, they stop laughing or they stop. I hate when people say like, why would I watch that? That's a cartoon. And I'm like,
right.
You don't have to stop watching you don't have to watch like Bluey, but there are other cartoons that you can watch, The Simpsons or something. You can still laugh at them. No one's making fun of you. It's almost like an insecurity.
Like people definitely move outside of their heads. I think when you're a kid, your imagination has no bounds. So, some people leave that land, and they find other things, and like, why would you leave? I don't know.
Yeah. You don't have to leave. It's okay. People say the same thing about picture books, but I would wager that any kids from every age, from 8 to 98, would enjoy a very serious or the most serious fart.
Yes. Thanks for that plug.
Because you can appreciate it on so many levels. Who doesn't love a good fart joke?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
So eventually you found your way into making content for kids. Like that's a perfect.
Yeah, when I was teaching at Hushin, which is in Philadelphia, all the art and editorial offices of Highlights are in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, which is only like 2 or 3 hours away. So every once in a while they would come in and you look through the kids' portfolios. And I was a student there and I actually got some work with them. I did like 5 pieces for Highlights. And then I was focusing on the comic strip. And one of the guys that I taught with was doing some work for Highlights. He's like, what you'd be perfect at is hidden pictures. So he's like, when they come in, we won't take away from the kids' time, but maybe during lunch, you can show them your work and just say you're interested in doing hidden pictures. So I did that and it just kind of took off. It was just one of those things that clicked. It's very hard to do hidden pictures, like especially the first 10, but I think I've done over 150 of them now. It doesn't get easier, just you learn tricks. But Highlights too that I wasn't just drawing a pretty picture with hidden things. There was a narrative going on. Things were being, people were doing silly things, or there was kind of a story happening, and they really liked that part. I was telling a story basically with a drawing. And then it led to more work. I started doing the what's wrongs on the back, which are those very complicated, we call them in America, Where's Waldo drawings, So when I started, I remember the figures were about 3 inches. And then the last one I did for Highlights about 3 years ago, the figures were like an inch tall. It's like, why am I doing this? So I kind of scaled back. And I just kept doing that. I just really, Highlights gave me steady work. I just kept working with them. And one of the things I did was, the guy that runs Awkward Family Photos, he contacted me and he said, I want to do like not a pornographic, like hidden pictures book, but I want to do like a one for like immature adults. So like instead of hiding sailboats and pencils, we're going to hide like the crack pipe and, we're going to hide a broken condom, like really funny stuff. And so with his help, we kind of assembled a team of people that I thought would be perfect at this. All the people I knew that did hidden pictures, and it became like a really big hit. So we did this like adult themed hidden picture book. It's called Awkward Family Photos Seek and Find for Immature Adults, I think is what it's called. Yeah. It was really fun. Like we did old people getting tattoos on their butts and someone giving birth, like this crazy stuff that Highlights would never let us do. From that Awkward Family Photos book, the author, Mike Bender, he said, would you be willing to do this book called The Most Serious Fart? I had just come off of doing the Costco Monopoly board, which is the biggest project I think I've ever done in my life. Yeah, it was like took about a year and 4 months, year and a half. And it was all digital, because everything was so complicated. I just did the whole thing digital, which I rarely do. I still draw with pencil and pen, and I color with Photoshop. And so I was like, yeah, I would love to do this part because I want to like do something messy with watercolor and, get away from, I don't want to do any backgrounds, I just want to kind of keep it simple. And he was like, yeah, that sounds great, And then, so yeah, I started doing these kind of messy. It's funny. My wife Daisy walked in and it looked like there were poop stains all on paper, like all over. Because at first I made the fart brown and she's like, you can't make it brown. I was like, come on. So then I scanned those in real high resolution, but they were only like this big. I don't know if I have. Anyway, yeah, maybe this big, So I scanned them at a real high resolution, like 1200 DPI. And then I just kind of added effects to them in Photoshop and, drew on top of them and gave them little legs and stuff. So it was really fun. It was unlike anything I'd ever done. And it was just so funny. And then one of the drawings I did, it's the second page. He's in a chair and it kind of looks at the top of the chair, looks like a butt. And I was like, it would be really funny if we hid butts throughout this whole book. Again, another thing, highlights would never in a million years let me hide. So I did like 3 sample pages and I hid the butts and I didn't say a word to the author. And I sent them to him and I kind of let him sit on it for a couple of days. And then when he wrote me back, I was like, so did you see the butts? And he was like, what? And he like went back and was like, oh my God, this is amazing. We have to do this. So we wound up hiding 300 butts. Making my mom proud. But, and then, we did a follow-up to that called The Bravest Booger, which was a lot of fun. And it was just fun, as a cartoonist to come up with because the fart had to be likable. It couldn't be repulsive. Yeah. You couldn't look at it and go, ugh. He did have to have that quality, so again, that's that fine line that you had to walk. Like he needs to be gross, but he's got to be lovable. He's also grumpy. So you got to make him grumpy lovable. You know what I mean? Cause he's just fed up with everything. Yeah. And the same with the booger. Like when it came time to this funny booger that's kind of a recluse and wants to stay in her house, she has this the part of the story. She has this crazy hair. And I was like, all right, I'm going to make like the hair out of, it's just snot. She's got a bouffant that's just snot. And again, I got to like experiment with that. I, tried all different techniques. But to me, it's fun too, because every time you do a children's book, you're kind of, Kelly, you're building, well, too, Chris, with, you're building a world. Every book you work on, it's like you're making a movie. You're Pixar, it takes them 5 years and they're like, here you have 3 months, you have 3 months to do. So it's kind of, trying to get us to figure out how we were going to go about, like, what does this world look like? Where do they live? It's just really fun. But yeah.
I feel like when you said before that you have to hold on to the kid inside, right? Those books would not have been possible if you were somebody who held on to that, right? That 10-year-old humor inside.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny. I get really offended because I just did New England has a kids con that I just did, and 90% of the people think it's funny. They see the title, The Most Serious Part, and then if they don't come over, they just go, the serious part, and they continue. There's like, maybe those 10% of the people that are like, they kind of look down on you, like this is what literature is today, and it's like, would you lighten the hell up? This is the whole point of this book is. You need to lighten up and laugh.
Yeah, they need that book the most.
Yes, exactly.
There is that weird. And at Kids Con, you're going to get a mix, right? Because it's a lot of comics at Kids Con. Yeah. But in the greater world of children's books, there is this kind of hierarchy of like, what is children's literature?
Right,
and what is not, And,
like a funny book is never going to win a Caldecott. It's always the very serious.
It's usually a beautiful book, a lyrical book.
Yes.
Yeah, but boy, wouldn't it be awesome if a funny?
Yeah, I thought I told Mike to submit it to author, and he was like, I didn't even bother, and I was like, oh, you should have, just because it would have been hilarious.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the way the Caldecott is picked, it's really librarians, and librarians are
Oh, is it?
librarians are one of the segments who really like of the publishing world that appreciate humorous books too, because
Yeah.
they're the ones on the front lines with the kids.
Mhm.
What are the books that the kids are taking out the most? Dogman and Captain Underpants.
Yeah, exactly.
Those,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
those are the books that kids love the most. The books
Yeah. Yeah.
that
The
make
ones
them
that make them laugh. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, and it keeps them engaged too, I feel like, you know.
Mhm.
And that was another thing about hiding the butts. I felt like that was another way that would, especially for boys, it would suck them in and really get them to start looking at the details because we had, you know, butts that were this big and some that were like the whole page. So they really had to figure out, you know, like, is that a butt or is that
Yeah,
just
some are
part of a
like just
clap?
holding up one of the pictures. It's like the little clips on the. It's like, is that a little butt?
It was very funny. I was just, you know, that's part of the joy of being a cartoonist to just working on something like that. I was just sitting here laughing, you know, just because I was having fun, you know, and I knew like,
Right. Right.
all right, I'm having fun. Everybody else is gonna have fun, you know, which is, I think, an important part of it.
Fun comes through. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
for
you.
sure.
Thank you.
I can
Yeah.
imagine you chuckling to yourself as you're drawing some of
Yes.
these pictures.
Yeah. My wife, Daisy, wants, she wants me to make us as farts for our downstairs bathroom.
The portraits. The
Me,
family
her, and my
portraits.
son. Yeah. Which
Yes.
I was like, oh, that's amazing. All right, I'm going to do that. I have a new book coming out called The Bored Panda.
The character.
Oh, thank you.
I love the way you're
Thank you.
drawing the panda. It's such a great
Thanks.
design.
Thank you. I had to stick to because the Bored Panda website has like a little mascot with like one gray panda eye, so I had to kind of stick to that a little bit. But then I kind of
Yeah,
added
the
my own kind of
personality
flavor
to
to
it.
it. Yeah, exactly. Because it's very graphic. It's very like flat, you know.
Mhm.
So I added some more dimension to it. But it was really fun to do like a book that was totally in color. You know, and I'm a proponent of, you know, same with the author Mike, which is the reason he wrote the book, is boredom is where creativity happens. You know, if I
Right.
wasn't bored as a kid, I wouldn't have sat and drew for hours. I wouldn't have,
Right.
you know, gone outside and explored. So that's what kind of the book's about. And I think that's really important, especially in today's day and age where, you know, kids are constantly entertained with devices and TV. You know, like we were talking about Saturday morning cartoons. Like you know, you maybe watched cartoons when you got home from school between 2 and 4 or 3 and 4, whatever it was. And then that was it.
Yeah.
Cartoons were done. You know what I mean? You had to figure out something else to do.
Right.
And Saturday they were over by like 11:30, 12, you know. So you just had to get out and go do something or sit and draw, you know. And then the VCR came out and I remember I would, you know, you probably did it, Kelly. Chris, you might be too young to have done that. But
No,
just
I was there. Yeah.
pause certain things and draw it. You
Yep.
know, or DVDs, you know, you pause it and then you sit and draw that, you know, you do that all the time.
With VCR, you'd pause it, it would only stay for so long, and then it would start moving again. So you have to like, shit, I got to find that one spot so I can copy that drawing.
Yeah, and you could just take a picture of it, you know, with your phone. And I loved like Rankin and Bass. I loved the Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, The Hobbit. I remember watching that with my family when I was a kid. The quality of that animation. I look back at it now, and it's a little odd, but just the you know
the way
the drawing was incredible.
Was incredible. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I think that Gollum is the Gollum that I think about.
Yes, me too. Me too. Yeah, almost like a mutant Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, kind of like frog kind of thing. But
yeah. I remember being. I'm sorry, guys.
He's not just gross. He's kind of because you were supposed to feel a little bit of empathy towards Gollum. So
yeah, exactly.
That design allowed that a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, the backgrounds and how haunting it was. Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous.
I loved. Like now my brain is accessing like those files. So there were songs in that movie.
Yes. Yeah. I have them all on my phone.
I can remember the work song. We don't want to go to work today.
Yeah.
That's like I saw
where
that.
There's a whip, there's a way.
Yeah. There's a whip, there is a way. Yeah. Right? Things stick.
Yeah, I remember because I didn't even know the Lord of the Rings or the Ralph Bakshi one came out. Because I always was why did they go from The Hobbit to The Return of the King?
Right.
I didn't even know that the Lord of the Rings was out. And I remember years later when DVDs were out, I finally rented it. And I was like, this is garbage.
It's a rotoscope, right? It's all,
It's terrible. Like,
yeah.
and people often make fun of the Rankin Bass one. And I'm like, it's far superior than the Lord of the, that Ralph Bakshi one is like traced people half the time. It's, oh my God, it's so
bad. Also, like, if again, like my brain is remembering, like, watching the Bakshi one, it's so dark that sometimes it's hard to like delineate the shapes. Like there's all of these dark night scenes and you're like, what's going on? Like you can't
and it looks like they filmed people and they kind of I don't know what, we call it posterizing now, but it's so weird, and I know they did the rotoscoping stuff because I don't know if you guys seen that scene of Aragorn running and he trips on his sword.
Yeah, right.
They drew it in anyway. Like, edit that shit out.
I know, right?
What are you doing? And then, I remember because Ralph Bakshi, I loved the new Mighty Mouse Adventures when they came out in high school. I loved it. They were so fun. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm going to do this movie called Cool World," and I was like, "Awesome!" Like, because Roger Rabbit came out, and I was like, "This is going to be amazing." And I was like, "This is terrible." Like, who made this, students? Like, it's. I mean, I remember Brad Pitt would come up to the girl character, and the arm wouldn't line up with like her shoulder. His arm would be floating. It was like, guys, what are you doing?
It's such a shame. The designs look great.
Yes,
like
exactly.
The backgrounds look amazing. The characters look cool until they start having to do anything.
Yeah. I always remember in the movie there's like this skull head that would randomly appear and go like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was like, was that someone's art project that they just needed filler?
Yeah, let's just throw that in there.
Yeah. Some piece of trash. Oh my God. And I remember being angry because I remember reading that he said if Cool World does well, he was going to do a Mighty Mouse movie. And I was like, well, I guess you're not getting to do the Mighty Mouse movie because you mess this up.
Right.
I've always loved Mighty Mouse. And when he did that reboot of it, I loved the slight changes to the way the characters looked and like
that's like a lot of the guys that worked on that wound up working on Ren and Stimpy, right? Because there was a lot of that flavor to it. A lot of that like very abrupt like movements and things that I just loved.
And we touched a teeny bit on the fact that you didn't love Disney cartoons, that they were fluffy and that people were singing all the time.
I feel like they've ruined a lot of fairy tales. The stuff that they do that's original. I love Lilo and Stitch. When Lilo and Stitch came out, I was like, oh, thank God. Like, this is amazing. The watercolor backgrounds. Right. And then it just got like shit on, like they barely produced it or barely marketed it. It was probably the best thing that came out of there since Sleeping Beauty. So anyway, Kelly, don't hate me.
I don't because I think, I have my love for Disney as like there's the art and there's the corporation. And there's two different things. So for a brief while, those two worlds collided because I worked for the theme park art department. So I got an inside look into my dream. I'm creating art and I'm drawing the Disney characters. They're going on products. They're not going in animation. But then I also heard the corporate side of it and the way that they spoke about these characters. And to me, the characters were sacred. Like I was their like dream employee who they would wheel into meetings to talk about the characters.
Oh, okay.
I knew every character. I could tell them every character, what movie it was from, what the character's personality was like. Like I could,
cool.
Like the little.
So it's all your fault.
It is. But at a certain point, when they're talking about Winnie the Pooh, and they're talking about like Winnie the Pooh in terms of like just dollars and cents.
Yeah.
Like, not about like Winnie the Pooh. Like
right.
Like to me, it's something more important. And at a certain point, it's how many times do I want to see my art on a popcorn bucket? Or a refillable mug.
Right.
At a certain point, it just got like, what is actually being made? This is just throwaway kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I think that was my other part of the research is I think the parks themselves make $22 million a day which is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just the amount of people, and like I hate waiting in lines, the heat, and I kept joking with my wife, like $22 million a day, but they can't put trees in for shade. We're in Florida.
One thing that was really cool was being at Disneyland, and there was a complete power outage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was neat to be there during that, but there were people stuck in the rides. I was not stuck in the rides, but there were people stuck in the rides for how long? And that
oh my gosh,
that must have been miserable.
Yes. Yeah, I think I happened to be on the, what was it, the Buzz Lightyear ride when it shut down.
It shuts down.
They have those projected faces.
Yeah.
So you could kind of, because they had to turn the lights on, you could see, all the flaw, and it was just like disturbing.
Wow, that's pretty funny. And I think like it would be fun. Like you do your posts, but it also would be funny in cartoons too.
Yes, yeah, and I've done some comic strips, or comic panels, gags about, like, I'm so glad we could share this heat stroke together. Is one that I did. It's like a family laid down, and that was from that experience. And then the other thing too, because we went again during August with her family again.
Not a
I was
good one.
like, why are we doing this?
Didn't we learn anything?
It's cheap, when you go at that time of the year, but it just, and then people were throwing up from like heat stroke. And so I had this old couple, one was leaning, like, where the big area is where all the gardens are, and you can see like the castle right before you get to the main walkway. There was a woman like just dry heave throwing up, and her husband's like patting her on the back. And so I drew that, and I have like one of the employees like, happiest place on earth, happiest place on earth. And then I have others like, one comic, I don't think I ever finished it because I felt like I saw it before. When I drew it, I was like, I feel like another cartoonist drew this before. No one pointed it out, so I should probably finish it. But it's just that, it's a mom and dad with like a couple of kids, and they are saying like, we're so happy we can share this miserable experience with you. Because as a parent, when you go there, you like, I remind friends, like, if you go there, that vacation is not for you. That's for the kids.
Right.
And if you feel like I'm not going to be able to you are going for the wrong reasons. It's work. Like this is your job now, when you take your kids there. It's just not easy. But hey, I won that left the curse.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I often wonder, like, the illusion of grandeur is like, I wonder if Disney ever wanted to call me to say do the fart book as a film or so, or a short, and we're like, oh, he hates us. We're never calling that guy. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, before we call him, let's look through his Instagram real quick. Holy shit.
Holy crap. Yeah, to say, like, I have a couple friends at Pixar. I've made at Pixar, through Instagram and Facebook. And whenever someone either works at Disney or Pixar, they're always like, I don't get I will not lift the curse thing. What is that? So I have to, like, through private message, basically explain it to them.
Is it all theme parks too, or is it just specific?
Yeah, it really is. I just don't. I've never liked theme parks. I don't like crowds. Yeah. I don't like the heat either. Yeah. It's part of the reason we moved up here to Massachusetts to get away from the August heat in Philadelphia.
Another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit, since you are Reuben Award winner, Chuck Dillon.
Yeah, you mentioned the Costco.
Oh yes,
project.
Yeah. So it was for the Costco Monopoly game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the other one was a Hidden Pictures project.
Yes, the division was variety entertainment, so that's like a lot of puzzles and different things like that. So it's still cartooning, but I was really surprised by that one because I hate to expect anything because I was nominated a number of times, and I just never expected it. win anything. So, but with the Monopoly board, I was like, I might win this one. You know, there's a possibility because of all the work I put into it, and a lot of the cartoonists could kind of see the work that I put into it. But the hidden pictures, I really didn't expect anything. And what's the saddest part about the hidden pictures thing? It's my first time getting a Reuben of those, and none of them were done for highlights, which is like, that's who I always did them for. They were for these other companies, you know, so I felt like I couldn't share it with highlights, you know, so that was a little heartbreaking. But I'm very thankful. Yeah, that was super overwhelming. You can watch, I think it's on YouTube, you can watch my funny acceptance speeches, but you could tell in the second one, I'm like, was for the hidden picture. I had nothing prepared just because I was like, there's no way I'm winning two.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way. So you could tell I'm just kind of fumbling my way through it. But yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. And yeah, speaking of the Cartoon Society, like wanting to do a comic strip, knowing about the Cartoon Society, even all those years ago, I felt like that window had closed, you know, when I didn't pursue a comic strip or doing gag comics or anything. And then when the National Cartoon Society, a friend of mine told me that they're kind of opening it up to all forms of cartooning now. And I was like, oh, that's awesome, you know, because it's one of the oldest I think the oldest cartooning organization in the world. You know, it was so neat to just hang out with those people, you know. It's really incredible. It's so encouraging.
I know you've gotten to see Jeannie Schultz again through the NCS. Did you ever get to have a moment where did she remember meeting you?
No, she did not remember meeting me, but they had actually in Kansas City when they started back up again after COVID. I went for that, and they did like a talk with everyone from the Schultz Museum, and Jeannie happened to be there. And so at the end, when they were taking questions, I got to basically stand up and tell her that story. Can't tell if she understood what I was saying because she was a little hard of hearing, I think. But every time she sees me now, she like gives me a big wink, you know. It's really nice. She's awesome. But yeah, it's so neat about being part of the Cartoon Society. You're like, oh, that's Jim Davis.
Yeah.
You know, or that's Mike Peters over there. Like, you know what I mean? It's like really wild, really wild. And then to think that like some of them know who you are, you know, like
right.
Bill Keane, who does Family Circus, you know, he's a Philadelphia guy, and you know, like Jeff, his son Jeff, working on script, like knows me now. You know, we're gonna, you know, we're not close friends, but we know each other, and it's just that's kind of the unbelievable part. But that's the other thing too about being a cartoonist is you find that so many cartoonists are just some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. You know, every once in a while you run into a cantankerous one, but for the most part, they're very accepting. They're always encouraging. You know, they're always kind of excited to see what you're doing. That's what I love about Jim Davis too. He's always interested in like what the young people are doing. You know what I mean? Just because of technology and all that stuff. It's neat to just talk to him and, you know, talk to all the other people and just kind of bounce ideas off each other, you know. But yeah. Actually going back to the fart book, I was just telling someone this yesterday. Do you guys know Nick Galifianakis? He's like a wonderful cartoonist.
Yeah.
I showed him the fart book in New York 2 years ago. Before the book came out, I was just trying to get like photos with some famous cartoonists with the book, you know, to tell me what they saw. And he read like the whole thing, and he goes, "Chuck, you've done some wonderful work, and you probably don't want to hear this, but this is the book you're going to be remembered for." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be drawing farts the rest of my life." It was really funny, but yeah, he's a good friend now, you know, and he's always so encouraging, and yeah. Anyway.
That's great. Yeah, he's got a great deadpan kind of dry sense of humor too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's always so very serious, you know, but there's a lot of humor in it, but it's always such very serious issues, but it's neat, you know.
Yep, that's great. That's cool. Any other cartoonists? Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Any other cartoonists as you were growing up and getting into like your college strip and like that you were really into?
Yeah, Stan Sakai, who does Usagi Yojimbo, is still one of my favorites. Yeah. And he was very encouraging. If you look at old issues of Usagi Yojimbo, you can see my letters in there when I was like 17 years old. And he printed some of my art, some of the art I did in high school.
Wow.
And then,
that was magical that you could write letters.
Yes.
You'd get the comics and it'd be that letters and you're like, oh, I can write letters?
Yeah. I know, and a lot of comics don't have that anymore.
No.
Right.
Oh,
right.
So
yeah, I know. It's so cool. Stan was always so, again, another way they encouraged me. They would print the letters or print like a drawing I did. It was really fun. And then what's cool is I got to kind of live the dream. Was it 2 years ago? Tom Luth, Stan Sakai's colorist, retired. So I just randomly contacted Stan because I've kept in touch with him. And I said, can I color your comic now? And he's like, well, we have like a company that does it through IDW now. He's like, but what do you want to do, a cover? And I was like, hell yes.
Heck yeah.
So I got the color two of Stan's covers, which was really neat. That was really, really cool to do.
That's awesome.
Just work with him. Yeah. He's such a brilliant cartoonist. And then Sergio Aragonés, of course. I think every cartoonist on earth knows who he is. He's amazing. Who else? There's just so many. Hank Ketchum. I love Hank Ketchum's the early Dennis the Menace work. Yeah. Some of the most beautiful line, I think, on the planet,
Just his balance of like the compositions, like the spotting the blacks are like so elegant.
Yeah, and how funny, stylized. And especially those silhouette strips he would do.
Yeah.
Just gorgeous. I think Fantagraphics came out with collected books like 20 years ago, and I got like
right over my head.
Yeah. I'll have to look at them. I put them away, and they're just.
I always
gorgeous.
say they're the ones I open the most.
Yeah.
God. What are the ones that I look at the most? Probably my Hank Ketchum books more than anything.
Yeah. He really is amazing.
If I'm gonna somehow stare at it, and I can be like that.
Well, somewhere you're not copying, but it generates some ideas, or it just inspires you.
Yeah, there's always books. I mean, there's millions of books around, but sometimes I do that. Like if I have a project to work on, and I'll be like, all right, I want to go and spend a couple hours staring at the greatest stuff.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of his non-Dennis stuff is amazing too. Yeah. Single panel stuff, Yeah.
Did you guys ever see? I can't remember what it's called. Charles Schultz did a series of strips for teenagers, so it's like, he drew adults, and a kid, and I can't remember what it's called. You can find. I think there's a collected book out now on Amazon. But it's just fascinating to see his characters kind of grown up, because it basically looks like Charlie Brown and all the Peanuts gang that are now older. It's just beautiful work. Yeah, so loose. He was always so loose. But current cartoon, I really like Will Henry. He does Wallace the Brave. Yeah, he's kind of a local guy. He's in Rhode Island, but his work is really good. Mark Parisi, who does some amazing. He's just so prolific. I'm always just blown away by. He's one of those people that he's so good it makes me angry. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like just the ideas he comes up with, I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But he's really good. I'm looking around here because I have some art up. I don't know. Yeah, just I on my Instagram, it's mostly a lot of cartoonists, that I just see what they're doing, and, get inspired by it, and sometimes get kicked in the butt by it, which I think is
Of course. You have to, and you have to let it happen too. It's like, it's good. It's a good
and I should talk about that too, because I felt like Facebook kind of saved me as a cartoonist, because I think as artists, not just cartoons, but as artists, community is so important. And I just wasn't hanging around with artists after I got out of college. A lot of them, of my friends became designers just because I feel like they didn't want to draw as much. So they became, the whole art community for me just kind of died. And then when Facebook and Highlights, around the same time, I connected with them. And it just allowed me to see what other people were doing, to talk to people about what we were doing. And that was so encouraging to me, But again, sometimes it kicked my butt, but it pushed me further. It was really awesome, and I think that's really important as artists, that we need that desperately, and it's so nice to have that through social media. It's one of the more positive things of social media right now, having that easy connection, like us able to do this. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Think about that 20 years ago,
right?
It's just like never, we'd have to meet by chance,
That's one thing I find frustrating more recently. It's like, I used to love to just go on Instagram and look at all the artists that I loved, or find new ones that I love.
Yes.
And now I don't see as much. I have all this other stuff coming like through that I get so frustrated. Like, I don't want to see
you kind of have to reteach it, kind
you
of
have to take the time to say, I'm not interested. I'm not interested.
Right.
Like, oh, this is so annoying that I have to write, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And start clicking like on the other things again. But it's like,
right,
why
exactly.
do I have to work for this?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so important. I have a friend, I think I've told you about her before, Kelly, my friend Mariana Balducci. She's an amazing Italian children's book artist. And the way we're like really good friends now, even when I went to Italy 2 years ago, and her and her husband like came and met with Daisy and I and my family, like that's how close we've gotten. And when she came to New York for her honeymoon, she came down to Philadelphia to visit me. It's just really, 20 years ago that could never happen. It'd be really difficult. But I was on Cartoon Brew, and she posted this little video, and I had a connection just to her Instagram, or whatever it was. And I just like reached out. I was like, oh, I really like this, and you just watch those relationships blossom and just kind of learn off each other, especially with her having the European Italian perspective, on children's books. It's so different than what we have in comics too. You see that in comics all the time, that the art is just so much different. Here it's a lot of superhero heavy, and over there it's more about literature, things like that. So
I noticed comics wise, like as I've gotten older, I'm more drawn to comics like in France. It's like, or
the French
Europe, so like they got more cartoony comics,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And a lot of them are creator driven, where the cartoonist is a writer. And Louis Trondheim is one of my favorite cartoonists over there.
Yep.
He was kind of eye opening how simple his work was, but the drawings of the buildings, where he's at in France were just gorgeous to me. And these simple little trees, but just beautiful and very simple colors, but it just always works. Yeah, it's just incredible. And I was going to say, one of the other things too that I always look through are the art of, like the art of Toy Story, the art of, I always get those books, even if it's like the art of the Lord of the Rings, or it's the art of Star Wars, it doesn't have to be animated, but I have tons of those. And every once in a while I get a little stuck. I just kind of page through those, and that kind of gets the fuel going, and sometimes it's just a matter of going outside, or going to an art museum, just seeing stuff that's not cartoons at all. It doesn't always have to be cartoons. Yeah.
Absolutely. You need input so that you can make better output. So go out and refill the well so that you can actually
exactly.
make stuff. And so the time that you haven't been able to draw much because of your hand, what have you been doing to kind of
That's a good question.
So your brain is your brain, right?
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily you can try sometimes to shut it off, but you really can't.
Yeah. Well, also it was during the hardest time of being in New England, is the New England winter. So you can't go out too much. But I like the cold, so every once in a while I go for a little hike or a little snowshoe hike, which is always really cool to see that. You feel like you're walking around in like a Calvin and Hobbes comic, right. All the trees sticking out. But and I honestly, I started playing video games, which I don't really play too much, but just how gorgeous they've gotten. I like the Assassin's Creed games just because I love history. I like archaeology. So it was so neat to like play a game where like I'm in ancient Greece and they researched the hell out of this game, and so you can see like, oh, they might have looked like this, or and so it's not like they keep it very historically based, like so much so that I don't know if you guys remember when I'm sure you remember when Notre Dame burned down. the city of Paris contacted the people that make Assassin's Creed because they did such an extensive scan.
Oh, wow.
They did such an extensive scan of Notre Dame. They had like all this information for them to basically rebuild it, So that's how accurate these games are. So I found that kind of fascinating. But yeah, I would sit and read a lot, trying to get through some Tolkien books that I never bothered reading that I'm still reading because they're so difficult to read.
The Silmarillion?
Yeah, Silmarillion. Yeah, and other ones too that I tried, and man, it's tough. And then watching some cartoons, some animated cartoons that I just had not had time to watch, which were really nice to watch. And then recently, you guys probably saw it online. I always wanted to do one of those like cardboard sled contests. They have those.
Yeah.
So there's several mountains.
Awesome.
There's several mountains nearby that I was like, I'm doing this. And I was drunk with my friend Jay, and I was like, hey Jay, what if we made a tauntaun, but I'm dressed as Luke and you're dressed as Han Solo, and we're in the belly of it, and it's belly up, and we slide down. And he was like, okay, get started. And he's like not artistic at all. He's like a manager, but it was just funny, so he helped me build parts of it, but I just started drawing, and it was so fun to build something that wasn't drawing so much as it was just like cutting and, it's funny. It was still too cold in the garage to build it. So I was like, Dave, do you mind if I build this like basically in our kitchen and in our, in our dining room, cause it wound up being 17 feet long, and the rules too, the limitations were really cool. Like it had to be cardboard. You could only use duct tape, paint, or zip ties. So we didn't use any zip ties because I couldn't figure out how to use those. But yeah, after I had the cardboard, I made basically the 17-foot long tauntaun, which is, and if any of your listeners don't know what that is, it's this.
Yeah, the toy.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
From Empire Strikes Back. It's like the basic kangaroo.
And they slit the belly open to keep lukewarm.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, we had like this. Yes, we had like this red belly, and it was just so fun. I did the whole thing in 1 week. Wow. We were planning it for a while, so I was collecting things and kind of sketching some stuff out. But really, I didn't really plan didn't really start cutting until about a week before, and then they came over and kind of helped me like duct tape it all together,
So when you showed up to this, which is probably a great event that happens every year locally, you showed up with this, like were people like, whoa.
Yes. We were because we had to drive slow there because this cardboard thing. I did do it in parts so that I knew when we got there we'd have to like assemble parts of it. Like put the legs on and the tail and things. But when we got there, we were the first ones to register, and she said, "What's the name of your float?" Or what's the name of your sled? And I said, "Corpse of a tauntaun." And she just looked at me. And she said, "What's your name?" And I was like, "Luke Skywalker." What's his name? That's Han Solo, duh.
Duh.
And we weren't even in costume at that point. I said to her, like, we made a tauntaun from Empire Strikes Back, and we're going to go down in its belly. And she was like, "Oh my God, that's going to be amazing." And then, so we were the first ones kind of there setting up. And what's funny is I thought it was going to be like all big stuff like that. And then all these kids start showing up. It's like these real tiny, which were awesome. It was so cool to see some of them. But I was like, oh crap. But they did have like a kids division and an adult division. And then they had an employees division. And the employees really went all out. Like I didn't know that there was an employees division. Like some of the stuff they made, I was like, there's no way we're winning this. Like some of the stuff they made was huge because they did it, at the location. So there was no size limit for them. But yeah, it was just so fun. It was just a really fun day. And then they had what's that called? Pond skimming. Have you guys ever seen that? Where they basically people on the sled or on skis come down and they basically have a huge pool and they like skim across the water. And thankfully it was like 62 that day, I think. So people are like in swimsuits, and one guy was dressed as Chewbacca, and I was like, I got to get a picture with him. But anyway, it's funny. Anybody over 40 knew exactly what the Tauntaun was.
Yeah.
They were like, everyone would come up and they'd say, I thought they smelled bad on the outside. Or they'd be like, your costumes are amazing, because we went all out with the costume. It was really fun.
Hilarious.
I'm hoping we'll do it every year. I think we might do the land speeder next year, the snow speeder.
Just
it'd be really fun. Yeah. Get more people involved.
That's amazing. That's just so great.
That was really fun. Yeah, I taught when I was at Hushin. I taught a class called Experimental Workshop for a couple of years, and a lot of it was paper sculpture. So I just, things I picked up on, but I've never made anything that big, so that was kind of overwhelming. But I'm glad it all came together, because a lot of times I was like, "The hell am I going to do this?" And Daisy would come in and she'd be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm thinking." No, just there. And then I'd do a little sketch, they're going, they're coming together. And sometimes they're not. I have to walk away. But I worked, I think, maybe 12 to 15 hours a day on it. So by the end of the project, I had paper cuts everywhere. I still have one here that keeps and then my hands.
Cardboard.
Cardboard's tough too. Yeah. And then using all the duct tape, like I had all these calluses from the duct tape, I guess, ripping my skin off. Yeah. So that was like, this one's finally going away. But
this just made me think of something I saw today while I was swiping on the internet. So Harrison Ford right now is in Manhattan. We must be doing a project. Did you see the video of him directing traffic today? Oh my God. That's like the coolest thing in the whole world. Because now he's curmudgeonly. He is such a curmudgeon. He looks like a curmudgeon.
Yeah. Do you guys watch? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Just that he's standing in the middle of a very busy intersection. It actually looks like it might have been near a tunnel too, like the way the cars are coming in. And he's like telling the cars where to go, and when they don't go, he's smacking the car. He's not leaving the street. He's staying there, and he's like still directing. Like, if I was in the car, I would have been like,
yeah. Not to toot my own horn, my wife knows this. I would have done that too. I would have been like, you get over here, because I'm just like, that's just the way I am. I'm just like, I can be a curmudgeon in that way. But if you watch this, there's a show called, I think it's called Shrinking on Apple TV that he's in. And it's just so fun to see him play comedy, because he hasn't really done much comedy. He's so good. And it's because he's that lovable grump, which is makes him so fun. But
he was on the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend podcast, and that episode was hilarious.
That's a good one.
I love, because being a Star Wars fan, I love when people ask Harrison Ford Star Wars questions and he just says, I don't care.
I don't.
It's like, it was a job. I did the job. I'm done with it. Like he did. Were you a Force ghost? He's like, I don't give a shit. It's really
we want to ask you, where can we find you online?
Oh, okay.
And when does Bored Panda come out?
Okay, Bored Panda comes out April 29th. Should be at all bookstores and pretty much everywhere. I know Barnes & Noble's doing a big push. It's through Penguin Random House, which is nice. And it also corresponds with the National Unplug Week. So a lot of schools are doing that with kids to kind of get them unplugged. That's because that's part of the premise of the book. But you guys can find me at chuckdillon.net, which Dillon is Dillon. There's only one I. I am not Deleon. And then my Instagram, I think, just look up Chuck Dillon and you'll be able to find me on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. So,
awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah. This was really fun. Good to get to know you guys a little bit better. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I love
man.
both your work.
Thank you so much.
It was really nice hanging around with you guys in New York. It was so fun. Yeah.
It was a blast.
Really fun.
Bye.